Welcome back to the Impact Driven Leader podcast. This is your host, Tyler Dickerhoof. Excited to be here with you today. Really a special episode. I probably have never done an episode like this. Who knows? Maybe I will. Maybe I won't again. But I'm excited to share a little bit of what's going on in our world, a little bit of how I relate to it, but more importantly, to hopefully share some wisdom, some growth, some lessons I've learned. And so I'm going to pull directly from today's headlines, and we're going to discuss it. I'm going to go through it, share some ins and outs. We're going to talk about intensity, the great separator. About a week ago, and here it is, we're middle of August, and a week ago, I happened to see a headline come across my news feed, right? I go through Google News, I go through Apple News, try to keep on world events, and it's sparse, as far as what I find. And this was the headline. It was about Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy, if you're not a football fan, that's okay. You're going to get a lot of value out of today, I promise. You're going to get value in regard to leadership. You're going to get value in regard to personal growth. But you're also going to get a perspective into this tension that I've spoken about for several different episodes as far as the changing landscape of leadership. So again, Eric Bieniemy, the topic was that many players on the team he now coaches, the Washington Commanders, were having a tough time with his intensity. This was reported by his head coach, Ron Rivera, during an interview. And as the article that was written, John Keim wrote this, and it says that Ron Rivera said some of his players expressed concern over new offensive coordinator Eric Bieniemy's intensity, quote unquote, intensity during practice. But Bieniemy, also the assistant head coach, said he's not about to change his approach. This is Bieniemy's words. He said, "I'm always going to be loud, always going to be vocal, always going to demand from my leaders." Bieniemy said, adding he knows what would happen if he altered his belief. He quote, "If I ain't doing my job, my ass gets fired. It's my job and my responsibility to make sure I'm getting our guys to do what I'm expecting them to do." Now, I'm going to pause right there. I'll continue to read a little bit more from this article, and I'm going to sprinkle in with some other takes on it. One of the lessons that you're going to hear about upcoming in a few weeks is what I learned from author David Dodson. David is he's an entrepreneur. He's a hedge fund manager now. He's done a lot of different leadership roles. He's also a Stanford professor. He's a cohort with Jim Collins. Gives a lot of information from Jim. And as we were having a discussion, you're going to hear about this in a couple weeks. And we talked about the difference between an individual performer. And this is what David goes on to talk about. And he goes, as an individual performer, it's all on you. If you need to work and burn both the candle at both ends, if you need to pour into it, you can get away with it. Sometimes your teammates revere you because you're the one that gets all the work done. But as David said, and he said this in our conversation, I share it now because it's so powerful in this context as we're talking about intensity, the great separator. Intensity for an individual performer is honestly what allows them to be a tremendous individual performer. But David shared this with me. He goes, when you move to managerial positions, and manager is being responsible for 2 or 3 people, you can still kind of get away with being that overperformer, meaning the person that, if they can't get it done, I'll get it done. I'll just take on more myself. And he goes, the problem really lies then as leaders, because a leader can't do that. A leader can't burn the candle at both ends, because what ultimately happens is there's not enough of them to get all the work done. See, a leader at that point needs to encourage, empower, and delegate for other people to do the work. Even in some cases, do the work better. All right, so let me jump back into this conversation that Ron Rivera had at his news conference. Again, Ron Rivera, the Washington Commanders head coach, he says, as a coach, he personally says this, I have to assimilate and get a feel for everybody. Rivera said, Eric has an approach, and it's the way he does things. It's not going to change because he believes in it. Rivera goes on to say Jack Del Rio, his defensive coordinator, has his approach. He said, having been a head coach, I think Jack has a tendency to try to figure guys out. Listen to this. Try to figure guys out a bit more as opposed to, hey, this is it. This is the way it's going to be. That type of stuff. Eric hasn't had that experience yet. I want to stop right there. Okay? I'm not beating Eric up. Like, I hope the best for him, right? I think for many people in those points in life where I was too intense, probably one of the best for me. But yet, he highlights what I just shared. As an individual performer, as a manager, you can get away with intensity. Intensity, as it's defined, being that bright and that dramatic light. As one person have shared with me in part of our roundtable, intensity is like the light that gets turned on in the middle of the night by your kids as you're sleeping in bed. And you're like, if you're watching a video, you'd see me. It's like, just turn it off. I can't handle it anymore. Now, the middle of the day, you're awake, you're out walking around, somebody turns the light. It's not a big deal. It's the same light. But the context is important. The context in this case is what your role is. As I was preparing for this and looking for more commentary, there was a video segment, The Herd with Colin Cowherd, and he had the analyst Jeff Schwartz. And he made this comment. And this question, I'm going to dive in this a little bit deeper. He goes, does intensity translate to being a better teacher? And he said, if it does, okay, in his opinion. Or does it take away from being able to teach or make players better? And I'm going to infer this. If your intensity draws back the ability, if I'm going to go back to David Dodson and what he shared with me, the difference from an individual performer to a manager to a leader. And I think if we were to chart out the opportunity of what intensity does and does not do, there would be a line for performance across a team and the level of individual intensity from a person. In other words, if your intensity drops, the performance of the team probably goes up. Now, does that mean you become lazy or apathetic? I don't believe that's the case. But you have to change. Another piece of popular media, Rich Eisen hosts a podcast radio show, a show on the NFL Network, and he was commentating about this. And there was one piece that he shared. He goes, in his personal experience, you best not, quote unquote, you best not be thin-skinned or sensitive around this man. Eric Bieniemy tells you what time it is every second of the day. Again, this is not to beat up on Eric. Hey, don't get that wrong. This is me sharing from my experience that people probably said this about me. If you haven't heard it, I encourage you to go back to the episode where I talked about the 4 barriers of leadership, and intensity is one of them. It's a barrier to leadership, and this is just in our world today. And why do I spotlight it and point it out? Because we're going to get to watch in real time the ebb and flow of what intensity does in this organization. There's another player who shared and happened to be on the Herd with Colin Cowherd again when he shared this. He also shared this in an article. And it was about Eric Bieniemy as well. This was also profiled in the New York Post. And LaShawn McCoy, who played for Eric Bieniemy as a running back when he was a coordinator for Eric Bieniemy at Kansas City. And he said this. He really keyed in on the relationships. He said, it's about relationships. See, what I've learned is intensity doesn't detract when psychological safety is in place. It can maybe enhance it. There's times for it. But when safety or standing or value and position are in flux, intensity was going to cause uneasiness and concern. It's going to take away from the ability for a leader to guide people. See, it's that bright light. It's that you're just too much. Just meet me where I'm at. As I share that and you're watching on video, you see me put my hands in my face because that's what intensity can do. And I share this little segment piece for you. Intensity is a divider. It divides people. Absolutely. And that's part of Eric's role, quite honestly, is to divide the people that are going to buy in and those that aren't. That's okay. But I also know this at a certain point, compassion is the binder for getting the most out of a team. And my ability to lead has always been my intensity. It's a go-to. It can be turned on, right? And I am at fault when I turn it on in the wrong places. It's like turning on that light in a dark bedroom in the middle of the night. It's just... But sometimes the intensity needs to be turned on. I'll share kind of a analogy that help you understand that. But remember this, intensity divides people. It's a bulldozer. It pushes people out of the way. It's not a way, in my opinion, to lead or engage or bind people to a bigger purpose. See, compassion is being willing to engage, care, empathize, connect. That's a binder that moves people. Now, my personal opinion, you can use intensity as a crutch, or maybe you're listening to this, and yes, I've used the example of Eric Bieniemy. It's in our popular media today. They're talking about it. His boss is talking about it. His peers are, talking about it. See, we can use intensity as a crutch. I've done it. Maybe you've done it. But it's not a way to lead. It's not a way to get the most out of people. I want to share with you today the 3 key factors, the 3 key components to combat intensity. But I want to also, before we go there, share this with you. Intensity is like a locomotive. It's a locomotive going at full speed, and it can bust through that famed 6-foot reinforced concrete wall. We've heard Napoleon Hill talk about momentum, right? Now, a little wooden block can stop that engine from ever getting started. See, sometimes that little block is our blind spot. It's our blind spot with our intensity that we're just trying to force that locomotive to go faster and faster and faster, because we know if we go harder and faster, we're going to be able to break through that concrete wall, but we're never going to get going if we're so intense to start. Think about it. You got a little block that's behind a car wheel, and that engine is full bore. You might scoot along the block, but you're not going to get it started. See, it's only with small, momentous, getting the flow going to our intensity, because a locomotive is powerful, not because of the engine that pulls all the cars or pushes them in some cases, but it is the entire mass of the 100 to 110 cars all moving in the same direction, that controlled effort and power. When intensity is employed then, it's like a laser and it can cut through things. But when it's employed and it takes away from people, it's a divider. See, the 3 pieces, the 3 factors, the 3 tactics to employ to combat intensity. The first one, connect and communicate. I believe connection is one of the greatest tools we can use as leaders. It is amazingly important in our world today. Going through COVID, one of the things that we realize is in many workplaces, our connectability, our connection to others was limited. So as leaders, we actually need to do more connection, because it isn't as easy as what it used to be. Meet people where they're at. And just like that locomotive that I shared with you, all the cars need to be connected. If not, that engine's not going to deliver results. Now, here's the next piece to that connect and communicate, is no one understands people's love language, their motivations, their personal goals. Hey, if I were to encourage Eric today, I would say you're probably not all wrong. People need encouragement. There's people on your team that respond to it, but there's other people, each time that you yell at them, they're like, I'm out of here. They could be your MVP or best players. And just because they don't respond to it doesn't mean they're bad or their skills aren't aligned. It means from a personality, that's not the way to express and show love. And as leaders, we have 2 opportunities. We can find people that fit into the way that we recognize and that we affirm. But here's what I know. When we go to that extent, it's very hard to find enough people. And we don't have people that brings such tremendous other attributes to our organization. We push them out of the way. The other piece here of the connect and communicate is communicate expectations, vision, and role often and clearly. Now, we can dial up our intensity the more that the communication is happening. It's in real time. It's going. It is done with presence and empathy. The next one is practice empathy. See, empathy, in my opinion, and in my definition, is putting your arm around people and walking with them. And there's different interviews, different commentary from Eric. And it's like, yeah, I put my arm around people and I talk to them. And I am excited that he does that. And that probably aligns him to a lot of different people. That is practicing empathy. But that means there's got to be a connection first. And if we're not making that connection first, if our intensity is too high that we're not practicing empathy, then you can't lead someone because you're not connected. There will be no influence. Maybe they'll do it for today, or maybe they'll do it tomorrow. They'll comply, but they won't achieve, meaning they won't do more. The next piece to combat intensity. So I've gone through connect and communicate, practice empathy, and the last one is go together. I go back to the conversation with David Dodson where he shared about the individual performer, the manager, and the leader. See, the individual performer is aligned just like the African proverb. You want to go fast, go alone. You'll get there fast. But if you want to go far, you got to go together. And see, going together means that you might go at a slower pace, a pace that the entire organization can go. And so when you think about the speed that you start out with, maybe their people can hang. They can align to your intensity, but you're going to quickly see them follow off. Or the people that you need, you're going to bulldoze right over. See, it's when we go together that we get the entire team to cross the finish line together. And as a leader, I believe that is our great opportunity and responsibility, to get people to cross the finish line together. Not just one, not just two, but the entire team. Because if we don't go together, it's going to come at a cost. Eric, in his commentary, what he shared, understood that was likely going to be his job. It was going to be his job if he didn't accomplish the team goals. So he has a pathway. He has a idea how to get there. It's been labeled as intensity. I've been labeled as an intense person. And as I've shared with you, it was a response to a point in my life where that was the only way I knew how to get through. That's the only way I knew how to survive. I found this article as I was preparing for it, and it was from HR Magazine. The author is Kim Gray. It was from 10, 12 years ago. And in the article, she shares that there's a bright side to intensity. It's again like that light shined at the right time. But it can often be the internal fear of not delivering on goals in our own sense of importance. That is where intensity can come from. See, when intensity comes from that place, out of fear, we're not able to see more and before others. And that's what a great leader can do. See, when we allow intensity, as Kim shares, to get out of control, we erode trust because it becomes all about me and what I want to accomplish. If Eric goes to the point where it's all about him being a qualified coach in order to get promoted and not what's best for each of his players, they're not going to achieve goals. But if he can refocus and make it about the team and about the players first and foremost, that's when he will do his absolute best. Just like I encourage you, if you're someone who uses intensity as the go-to move, dial it back. Meet with people. Connect with them. Be empathetic. And then go together. Intensity has a dark side. But I also know this. When you have momentum and you want to get through that concrete wall, Intensity is your best gift. But trying to go hard charging with intensity all the time, you're never going to get that locomotive started. You're never going to move that entire organization towards your destination. I hope you got value from today. I hope you took a little bit different take from me sharing about intensity, my personal journey, and just what I see in our world today. See, we're dealing with this in real time. We'll be able to see how this plays out over the football season. And rarely in life can we see that or see something so dramatic as the description of an intensity. It's a barrier that I've dealt with. It's a barrier that I know so many people rely on as their go-to in leadership. It's what separates them as an individual performer. But as a leader, it also separates you. It separates you from the rest of the organization. And when you're doing that, you may go fast, but you're not going to go very far. If you got value from today's episode, man, I'd love if you shared it with someone. At the same point, if you could rate, review, if you haven't done that in quite a while, I would appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, thanks for being here. Hopefully you enjoyed the facial dynamics. I gave the full-on presentation today, so I'd encourage you to watch there. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for being a part of the community. Until next time, have a good one.